When did a customer's greed put your health insurance on the chopping block? So I just found out my unreasonable customer is literally going to cost me my health insurance because he thinks I owe him money, and I'm sitting here in the dark, staring at the flashing green light on my Ring doorbell, wishing I could afford to just delete my whole identity and move to Iceland. TBH, I'm vibrating with anxiety. Like my left eyelid won't stop twitching, and I haven't eaten anything solid since yesterday afternoon when I stress-ate a pint of Talenti gelato. I need to vent this out somewhere before I actually explode. This whole mess started slowly like most disasters do, but it just went full Chernobyl in the last 72 hours. I am Gregory Morgan, 39M, and for the last 7 years I've worked completely remotely, managing tech support for small businesses. It's pretty chill, honestly. My setup is just my IKEA desk, my crack screen iPhone 14 constantly plugged into a power brick because the battery health is at 78%, and my dual monitors where I keep Slack open on one and Netflix on the other. Don't judge, it's necessary. One of the upsides of remote work, especially when you hit almost 40 and haven't spoken to your parents since 08, is that your time is mostly your own. But the downside is that when you start blurring the lines between work and personal life, specifically, when you start running a completely unregulated, poorly thought-out side hustle, things get dangerous fast. My side hustle? Helping small-time entrepreneurs with their pre-seed funding. I know it sounds fancy. It wasn't. It was basically lending money to guys who couldn't get approved by a bank because they had the financial track record of a squirrel. I used some savings I'd built up, mostly from the inheritance my Aunt Bethany left me, God bless her, and I set up this super basic P2P lending platform. It was all electronic, Zelle and Cash App transfers only, and I ran it entirely from my beat-up 2018 Honda Civic when I needed a change of scenery. The interest rates were high, yeah, but these guys were desperate. Most of my clients were fine. They paid on time, understood the terms. They were doing things like opening small boutique coffee shops or buying an extra fryer for their food truck. Then there was Austin Ramirez, 23M. I met Austin through a mutual friend, a guy who swore Austin was going places and just needed a leg up. Austin wanted $5,000 to launch an app that was, and I quote, TikTok but for people who hate dancing. I looked at his business plan. It was terrible. It was literally 4 pages long with Comic Sans font on the headings. I tried to walk away, I really did, but Austin was charismatic and he talked about his grandmother and how he wanted to buy her a new roof. I know, red flag. I fell for the guilt trip. Past me was such an idiot. I ended up giving him $3,500 over 3 installments starting about 4 months ago. The terms were simple: $200 weekly payments, 12% interest, payable over 6 months. The first month, perfect. Austin was like, thanks man, you're the best. Payments coming in like clockwork. He'd send the $200 via Cash App every Tuesday at 11:47 a.m. right before lunch. The second month things got shaky. The first Tuesday the payment was late. I texted him around 5:30 p.m. Hey Austin, checking on the payment today? He texted back immediately. Oh shoot, SRRY bro, busy day, we'll hit you up tomorrow morning, promise. I replied cool, just need it by EOD Wednesday. He didn't send it Wednesday or Thursday. By Friday I got the money, but it was only $150, no explanation. I figured whatever, young guy learning the ropes, maybe a client stiffed him. I let it slide because I hate confrontation, which is probably why I'm almost 40 and still hiding my face from my neighbors. This is where Lee Young, 27F, enters the chat. Lee is the only other person who knew about my lending side hustle. She works in actual finance, like the real respectable kind, and she was my wise mentor/conscience. She's fiercely smart and has this incredible ability to spot BS from a mile away. I called her that Friday night when I was trying to figure out how to pay my $1,247 rent and realized Austin's $50 shortfall meant I couldn't splurge on the $43.67 grocery bill at Trader Joe's I planned. Lee, I think I messed up with the Austin guy, I said, leaning back in my office chair. I was wearing the same stained sweatpants it had on since Tuesday. Lee was probably wearing some impeccably tailored linen pants, even though she was also working remotely. She never looks disheveled. Gregory, honey, tell me you didn't loan money to the kid who calls his app Swipe with 2 Ys. I did, and now he's shorting me and he's not communicating. He literally just sent $150 and wrote oops in the Cash App memo. Lee sighed, and I could hear her typing something in the background. Okay, we need to draw a hard boundary here. You're not a bank, you're not his mom. You need to send him a formal notice via email stating that any deviation from the payment schedule constitutes a breach and you will pursue legal action. I groaned. Legal action, Lee? I do tech support. I can barely navigate my insurance claims. Doesn't matter, you use the jargon, you set the expectation. You gave him money, he needs to respect the agreement. And GL Gregory, the second you let him send oops, you told him the rules didn't apply. Lee was right, she always is. She's the kind of person who uses her PTO hours for legitimate vacations instead of just using sick days because she's too hungover to manage a Zoom meeting. So I wrote the email. It took me 2 hours and I had to look up words like indemnification and default clause. I sent it late Friday night. Then for 3 weeks Austin was perfect. $200 every Tuesday. I felt great. I told Lee, see, I just needed to be firm. She just sent me a thumbs up emoji, which I knew meant wait for it. The real breakdown happened 2 weeks ago. It started with a text that was just a picture of his dog. I didn't reply. Then he sent me a voice note. His voice was shaky. Hey Gregory, look man, I'm having a super tough week. My plumbing burst right. Cost me $85 just for the call-out fee and the actual fix is gonna be like $347. Can I just pause the payment this week? I'll double up next week, pinky swear. I felt that familiar stomach drop feeling, that mix of I should be compassionate and he's manipulating me. I remembered Lee's advice, boundaries. I texted him back. I appreciate the update, Austin. I understand emergencies happen, however the agreement is binding. I can offer you a 1-week extension, but the full $400 will be due next Tuesday, no exceptions. The agreement is clear on this. It took him an hour to reply. When he did, the tone shift was massive. Wow, okay, NGL, that's kinda messed up. Gee, I thought we were cool. It's $200. I'm literally hemorrhaging cash over this leaky pipe. I replied, the funds I loaned you are capital, not disposable income, Austin. If you can't manage this $200 payment, how are you managing your business? Silence for 12 hours. The next Tuesday came, no payment. The Tuesday after that, nothing. Now Austin was 2 payments, $400 behind. I started sending automated reminder texts via my invoicing app, a cheap one I found on Amazon. He started blocking those, then the harassment started. He wasn't contacting me about the money anymore. He was contacting me about my job. I got an email that looked legitimate, saying it was from my head of HR asking me to confirm details about my secondary income streams. It was obviously fake. The corporate logo was slightly blurred and it was sent from a Gmail address that ended in corpbiz HR info. I forwarded it immediately to Lee, shaking. Lee, look at this. Is this real? Did I break an NDA? Lee called me immediately. No, Gregory, this is amateur hour trolling. But someone is trying to scare you into backing off. This is absolutely Austin. But how would he even know who to email? You're a public figure in your niche, Gregory, she said patiently. It takes 5 minutes on LinkedIn and a quick search of your past work history. He's trying to weaponize your professional life against your private life. He's escalating. I was so pissed off, I wanted to scream. I decided to send him one final message, clear and concise, detailing the total amount owed, $3,500 principal plus accrued interest, coming out to $3,920.45, giving him 48 hours to remit a minimum of $400 or I would proceed with a collections agency. I sent it Thursday at 4:00 p.m. That night, I was sitting on the couch watching Love is Blind and trying to de-stress. I had my AirPods in and I was about to tuck into a fresh pint of Ben & Jerry's when my phone started going crazy. It was 9:30 p.m. 27 calls in 1 hour, all from an unknown number I refused to pick up. I knew it was Austin and I wasn't going to let him verbally manipulate me. The texts, though, were terrifying. 9:38 p.m. Austin, pick up the phone. We need to TLAC. 9:40 p.m. Austin, this is serious. 9:45 p.m. Austin, I am warning you, you have no idea who we're messing with. 9:50 p.m. Austin, I need to talk to you about health. 10:02 p.m. Austin, my pipe burst and now gonna burst. I blocked the number. I muted all notifications. I was full body shaking again. I felt sick to my stomach, literally. I ran to the bathroom and threw up the one piece of leftover pizza I'd managed to eat for dinner. The next morning, Friday, I woke up feeling exhausted but wired. I had an 8 a.m. Zoom meeting that I couldn't miss. I forced myself to put on a collared shirt, mute the webcam, and pretend I was listening while I chugged gas station coffee. At 10:15 a.m., during a break between back-to-back calls, I decided I needed to get out of the apartment. I grabbed my keys, threw on a jacket, and drove my Civic down to the Starbucks on Main Street. While waiting for my venti iced latte, which was annoyingly $8.65 because I added 3 extra shots, I checked my personal email, which I hadn't opened since the Austin debacle started. I had 47 new notifications. One stood out. It was from a different email address than the last one, but the sender name was Austin R. Subject, you're fired. The body of the email was brief. Gregory, I just spoke to someone at your company. They confirmed they are reviewing your case. They are not happy about you running a shadow lending operation from your work laptop during PTO hours. You should not be accepting money through Zelle and Cash App. You are exposing them to massive liability. They seem particularly interested in how often you were logged into the corporate VPN while making $200 withdrawals to cover your bills. I told them everything. I told them about the time you asked me to Zelle the money to your corporate email for tracking purposes, which you did, remember that? I suggested they check your health insurance policy. I'm guessing they won't be paying for your therapy anymore once they realize the extent of your fraud. You have 24 hours to pay me back the original $3,500 I borrowed. I'll call it a wash, or I'm going directly to your manager's boss. Tick-tock, Austin. I felt the blood drain from my face. I literally dropped my iPhone. It clattered against the tiled floor of the Starbucks and slid under a table. I scrambled to retrieve it, my hands shaking so badly that when I finally picked it up, my vision was blurry. He got my actual work policy details. He knew about my health insurance. I remembered a conversation I'd had with Lee about 6 weeks ago when I was complaining about my skyrocketing copays. I said something like, if I lose this insurance, I can't afford my meds. My deductible is $3,000 and I'm halfway there. Austin and I had been talking on speakerphone while I was prepping dinner and he was asking for an extension on his very first payment. He heard that. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Austin wasn't just threatening my job anymore. He was threatening my ability to function. I pulled out of the Starbucks parking lot, spot 42, near the overflowing garbage can, and drove straight home. I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight. This wasn't about $400 anymore. This was about total financial and medical annihilation. I knew I needed to talk to Lee, but before I could even dial her, my work phone, the corporate Samsung Galaxy I kept hidden in a drawer because I hate having 2 phones, started ringing. It wasn't HR. It was my direct manager, Jim, who is usually chipper and talks only about the weather and fantasy football. I answered, my voice a croak. Hey, Jim. Jim's voice was completely flat serious. Gregory, where are you right now? Are you at your apartment 3B? Yes, I just got back from a coffee run. Why? There's been an incident. I need you to log off the VPN immediately and stop all client contact. We've received a very detailed and concerning report regarding your activities. A formal investigation is underway. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it ringing in my ears. I felt faint. Investigation? Jim, what are you talking about? Pertains to your use of corporate resources for unregulated financial transactions, Gregory. Specifically, and here his voice got really low, almost whispering, it mentions several specific high-risk health issues you're currently managing and how your continued employment might put the company at risk if you're engaging in predatory behavior. He used the word predatory. Austin had twisted the narrative completely. I tried to defend myself, stammering. Wait, what are you saying? I never, Gregory, I have to stop you there. I was specifically told not to discuss the details. But I will tell you this much. They mentioned your full medical history, things only someone who knew you personally or had access to your insurance information would know. I'm afraid your account with our health provider United Healthcare has already been flagged internally. I hung up. I didn't mean to. My hand just let go of the phone. It slid to the floor again. Austin didn't just contact my work. He somehow impossibly leveraged my confidential medical information, the details of the very expensive, high-risk thing I have to manage, to make me look unstable and high-risk to my employer. My health scare complication wasn't just stress from the lending. Austin had found a way to use my actual, debilitating medical condition as a weapon to destroy my career and my access to care. I rushed back to my computer, frantically trying to log into the corporate United Healthcare portal. It usually takes 3 seconds. I typed in my password, access DENIED. I tried again, access DENIED. I tried to call the insurance hotline from my personal iPhone, but the signal kept cutting out. All I heard was the automated voice repeating, "We are experiencing high call volumes. Your anticipated wait time is 45 minutes. I looked out the window. It was starting to rain, matching the absolute panic swirling inside me. I was shaking so badly I couldn't type. If they flagged my insurance, I was done. Without that coverage, my monthly medication alone costs more than my $1,247 rent. I had to fix this. I had to call Austin and tell him he won. I grabbed my phone, opened Cash App, and prepared to Zelle him the $3,500 he demanded just to make the nightmare stop. But then my phone rang again. This time it was Lee 27F. I answered on the first ring, sobbing. "Lee, it's over, I'm done." He contacted Jim. He brought up my health stuff. "They locked me out of my insurance, Lee. I swear to God, they locked me out." Lee's voice was calm, almost unnervingly steady. "Deep breaths, Gregory. I know. I got a text from Jim 5 minutes ago too. Austin is very, very stupid but effective." Stupid. He just ended my career and my access to treatment. No, Gregory, he didn't end your career. He committed multiple felonies. This isn't just about debt collection anymore. Blackmail, extortion, HIPAA violations. Even if he accessed that information indirectly the minute he used it against you, he crossed a massive legal line. Your job will likely fire you, but you can sue him for so much more that he will never recover. I don't care about suing. I need my meds. I need my insurance back right now. I was screaming now, pacing the length of my tiny apartment. "I know, that's why we need to deal with this differently," Lee said. "You're going to set the boundary, Gregory, a real one. You are not sending him the $3,500. Sending it makes you complicit and proves his narrative that you were hiding something. You are going to fight back, but not in court yet. You need leverage." "What leverage do I have?" "He has my medical history. He's still a 23-year-old kid running a fake app. He thinks he's untouchable because he's anonymous behind a text message. I have an idea. It's risky, but if we execute it right, we get his payment and we stop the bleeding immediately. Then we clean up the mess at your job. Are you listening to me?" "Yes, what is it?" I whispered, rubbing my temples, trying to stop the pounding headache. "You need to talk to him, but not like an indebted lender, like an equal. You need to meet him in person. We're going to set up a meeting where you convince him you are going to pay, but you need to see him face to face to sign the final agreement. And you are going to record the whole thing." "Record? Why?" "Because we are going to make him admit on tape that he blackmailed you using your health information, Gregory, and we are going to use that recording to bury him." I felt a fresh wave of panic. Meet him in person. The man who was calling me 27 times an hour and threatening my health. "Lee, I don't know," I said, my voice wavering. "He sounds unhinged." "He is, but desperate people are predictable," Lee said, her voice dropping. "I've already contacted him from a burner number pretending to be a collections agent." He freaked out. "I told him you are terrified and you want to meet tonight to settle it, but only if he agrees to drop the corporate threat." "Tonight?" "Tonight. I told him to meet you at that crappy diner outside of town, the one you always complain about. At 8 p.m., now you need to listen closely. I'm going to teach you how to set a boundary that this little psychopath will never forget. You're going to walk in there, show no fear, and get him to confess everything. And Gregory, this is crucial. When you go into that diner, you need to ask him about the very specific piece of medical data he used against you." Lee paused for a long second, and I heard the sound of her typing again. "Because the information he used to scare Jim," she said slowly, "was something I sent you in a highly confidential email only a week ago detailing how to fight a specific insurance denial claim. And I think he got that information not from your corporate server but by compromising your personal email account. And if he did that, then he has access to a lot more than just your health status. He has access to my information too." She inhaled sharply. "Gregory, you are meeting Austin in 1 hour. You are going to get him to talk. If you don't, we are both ruined. I need you to know exactly what you are going to say when he sits down at that table." "What am I going to say?" I asked, my voice barely a squeak. "You're going to look Austin Ramirez straight in the eye," Lee instructed, her voice like steel. "And you are going to say, let's talk about the specific details of that denial claim that you couldn't possibly know unless you access my personal correspondence. The one involving the claim for my treatment for acute stress disorder caused by my estranged parents. Because Austin, you see, I haven't spoken to them since 2008, so how could you know I'm still paying for therapy for that trauma? I gripped the phone, suddenly freezing, realizing the sheer depth of the violation. He didn't just access a random health file. He accessed the most vulnerable part of my life, the reason I cut off my family 2 decades ago. And when I ask him that, he'll panic. When he panics, he'll confess. Get it all on the recording, Lee commanded. But whatever you do not mention my name. He cannot know I am involved. If he does, hell run. I am coming up with a plan B right now, but you need to hold the line until I confirm it. Do you understand? Do not let him leave that diner until I send you the signal. And I am already on my way to your location. You're coming here? No, I'm coming to the diner. I'll be in the car across the street. If anything goes wrong, you run straight to the beat-up blue Toyota Corolla parked in the far corner. Got it? I swallowed hard, looking at the clock. 7:15 p.m. I had 45 minutes to prepare for a confrontation that might either save my life or completely derail it forever. I grabbed my jacket and my iPhone, trying to figure out the best place to hide the recorder. The anxiety was a raging fire in my chest. I had to face him. I had no other choice. I opened the door, stepping out into the cold night air. I was going to set a boundary. I was going to fight back. And I knew deep down that Austin Ramirez, 23M, had no idea who he was actually dealing with when he messed with Gregory Morgan, 39M, and my absolutely furious mentor, Lee Young, 27F. I just needed to survive the next hour. You guys, I'm vibrating. That feeling when your adrenaline dumps so hard your teeth hurt, that's me right now, typing this out from the absolute safety of my apartment, which honestly feels like a bunker after last night. I left you hanging right before the diner showdown. I swear, the 45 minutes I had to wait for 8 p.m. were the longest of my life. I spent the first 15 minutes hyperventilating into a paper towel and the next 30 trying to figure out how to operate the voice recorder app on my iPhone without accidentally butt dialing Jim, my manager. Lee was totally calm on the phone, which helped anchor me, but she was also terrifyingly clinical. She reminded me of the rules: get him to talk, show no fear, don't mention her, and absolutely positively call out the specific obscure therapy detail. The one about my acute stress disorder treatment that stems from the time I cut off my parents in 2008. That was the crucial piece of leverage, the thing Austin couldn't possibly know unless he hacked my personal correspondence. I wore my most intimidating jacket, a black North Face fleece NGL, and drove the Civic over to the diner, the Grease Pit, which is exactly as charming as it sounds. It's about 20 minutes outside of town. Perfect spot for a shady confrontation, TBH. I pulled up around 7:55 p.m. I parked way down at the end near the dumpsters so I could look for Lee's beat-up blue Toyota Corolla. Bingo. It was nestled in the far corner of the adjacent hardware store lot, lights off. Lee was there. Knowing that was the only thing stopping me from just driving home and living in my car until I died of vitamin deficiency. I walked into the diner. It smelled like old coffee and regret. Austin, 23M, was already there, sitting in a booth in the back corner. He wasn't dressed like a tech mogul launching Swipe with 2 Ys. He was wearing a slightly grubby hoodie and looked genuinely stressed, but there was this weird, arrogant edge to his posture, like a toddler who just successfully mugged a senior citizen. I walked over. He looked up and I saw his face shift from smug to nervous. I slid into the vinyl booth across from him. I didn't say hello. I just put my phone on the table, face down, and made sure the recorder app was running. I had set the volume to max and put it on speaker, but muted so the microphone was sensitive. I hoped the diner music, a terrible rendition of Sweet Caroline, wasn't going to ruin the audio. Gregory, you came, Austin said. His voice was shaky. He tried to smile, but it looked more like a spasm. I looked him dead in the eye. I focused on his forehead, which always helps me not look away. I came because you decided to cross a line that you absolutely should not have crossed, Austin. We aren't here to talk about the $400 you owe me. He leaned forward, dropping the swagger immediately. Look, man, I'm sorry. I didn't want to go there, but you pushed me. You cornered me. I just need the $3,500 back, okay? And I'll drop the whole thing with Jim and HR, I swear. I almost laughed, the audacity. He wanted me to pay him back for the money I loaned him, plus interest, which I was forgiving, plus the damage he caused. The $3,500 is not on the table, Austin, I said, trying to channel Lee's steel-cold authority. And GL, my voice cracked a little, but I immediately lowered the volume and continued. The money you borrowed is legally binding. What we are discussing now is blackmail, extortion, and the unauthorized use of private medical information. He shifted nervously. Whoa, hold on, I didn't blackmail anyone. I just told Jim that you were acting shady and that you were distracting yourself at work. I looked up the company policy and I pointed out how you were violating the corporate VPN rules. You did more than that, I pressed. You leveraged my health. You told Jim specific confidential details about my high-risk medical status to make me look unstable. Austin sputtered. I didn't. I mean, I saw some stuff when we were talking on the phone. You mentioned high risk. I mentioned high risk in passing, yes, but you named the specific disorder, Austin, the one I have been managing since 2008, the acute stress disorder stemming from my parents. How did you know that, Austin? That's not public information. That's in my insurance denial claim, which I only received last week. He went completely pale, like genuinely physically ill. The color drained out of his face so fast I thought he might pass out into the lukewarm chili the waitress had placed next to him. This was the leverage Lee had predicted. He realized he'd overplayed his hand dramatically. He'd gone from shady borrower to actual criminal in one text message, and he knew he'd been caught. I don't know what you're talking about, Gregory, he stammered, looking around the diner frantically. That's crazy talk. I just saw the email to Jim and I forwarded it to you as a warning. That's it. No, that's not it, I said, leaning in. I had to make sure the recorder picked this up. The information you used, Austin, was from a highly confidential correspondence between me and my financial advisor detailing how to fight the denial claim for my therapy costs associated with that specific trauma. Did you compromise my personal email account, Austin? Because if you did, you didn't just get my health status. You got every other piece of personal data I have. He swallowed hard, rubbing his palms on his jeans. Okay, fine, okay, maybe I found your password list. You had a really easy password. Gee, it was like your high school mascot and your birth year. It took me like 10 minutes. I felt a surge of pure burning humiliation and rage. My password was terrible. I should have been embarrassed, but the rage totally overtook it. You hacked my email, Austin. And you used the information you stole to try and destroy my career and block my access to life-saving medication, all over $400. I was desperate, he whined. He was dropping the tough guy act rapidly. My app failed, Gregory. My plumbing burst. I have no money. If I couldn't pay you, I needed to make you back off. It was self-defense. Self-defense, NGL. I almost flipped the table. But I stayed calm. I had to keep him talking. So you admit that the information you used against Jim was stolen from my private email account, I stated, carefully enunciating every word. Austin slumped back in the booth. He ran a hand through his hair. Yeah, I guess I didn't think you'd find out. I thought you'd just panic and pay me back. It's just how the game works, right? Leverage. This little idiot thought blackmail was just how the game works. I was livid but triumphant. I had the confession. It was messy, it was recorded, and it was devastating. The game is over, Austin, I said, reaching for my phone. I am not paying you $3,500. I'm not paying you the $400 you owe me. In fact, you owe me a lot more than that now. Wait, what are you doing? Austin panicked. He reached across the table toward my phone. I am sending this recording to my lawyer, I said, standing up quickly. And then I am sending it to Jim, explaining exactly why you have my medical history. Enjoy being reported to the FBI for cybercrime, Austin, and maybe use that time in jail to work on your financial track record. I turned and walked away. I didn't run, even though every cell in my body was screaming to bolt. I walked deliberately toward the door, feeling Austin's stunned eyes burning into my back. I got outside and the rain had picked up. I sprinted across the pavement, ignoring my Civic, and ran straight for the beat-up blue Toyota Corolla. I wrenched open the passenger door and dove inside. Lee was in the driver's seat wearing sunglasses even though it was 8:15 p.m. and pouring rain. She looked like a spy. Did you get it? She demanded, not looking at me but staring intensely at the diner entrance. I was shaking so hard the phone almost slipped out of my hand. Yes. He confessed to hacking my email and using the ASD detail. He called it leverage. NGL, I think I blacked out for a second there. Lee sighed, a long, controlled exhale. Good, that's phase 1 complete. Before she could say anything else, the diner door burst open and Austin ran out. He looked absolutely frantic. He spotted me, or rather, the general direction of me, and started sprinting toward the hardware store lot. Lee didn't hesitate. She slammed the car into reverse. Hold on, she instructed, and executed a perfect, terrifying reverse J-turn out of the parking lot, tires squealing dramatically on the wet pavement. We were back on the road heading toward town before Austin was halfway across the lot. He was left standing alone in the rain, yelling something incomprehensible. I looked back. He stopped running and pulled out his phone. I realized he was probably trying to call or text me, maybe threaten me again, maybe apologize. He just realized he made the mistake of his life, Lee observed calmly. Now we execute plan B. I need you to forward that recording to me right now. I did it instantly. It was a 6-minute audio file labeled simply Austin Confession. Okay, now Jim, she said. We don't want Jim to hear this from Austin's panicked, backtracking texts. You need to send Jim an email right now. Short, concise, professional, I'll dictate. I pulled over to the side of the road, ignoring the honking truck driver behind us. I opened a new email to Jim. Lee spoke, her voice still radiating pure, efficient rage. Subject line, formal report of cyber extortion and theft of corporate data. Body, Dear Jim, please find attached a highly disturbing audio recording. This is evidence that the claims made against me were fabricated by a disgruntled borrower, Austin Ramirez, who illegally accessed my private email correspondence and attempted to extort me using confidential high-risk health data, which he specifically named in this recording. I believe his actions may have compromised the corporate network security if my account was accessed while on the VPN. I will cooperate fully with the investigation. I have retained legal counsel and am filing a police report for cybercrime immediately. I typed it exactly as she said it, attached the audio file, and hit send. It was 8:45 p.m. on a Friday night. I had just simultaneously taken down my extortionist and potentially torpedoed my own job. NGL, I felt intensely ill but also incredibly powerful. Now what? I asked Lee, my voice hollow. Now we go to your apartment. We change every single password you own. We install 2-factor authentication on everything. We check your bank accounts. And then we file the police report. You're coming back to my place tonight, Gregory. You are not staying alone in your apartment. She was right. Austin knew where I lived. He was unhinged. I couldn't risk it. So 2 days later, it's now Sunday night. I am typing this from Lee's guest room. It's clean, minimalist, and smells faintly of artisanal soap. I have eaten 3 square meals. I have successfully changed approximately 47 passwords. The fallout has been immediate and devastating, but not entirely negative. Update on Jim work situation. Jim replied to the email 30 minutes later, completely shell-shocked. He just wrote, Gregory, I am sending this straight up the chain. Thank you for this evidence. Please remain logged off the VPN. We will be in touch Monday morning. Monday morning arrived yesterday. I got a call at 9:00 a.m. sharp from the head of HR, a woman named Janice who sounds like she chews gravel. Janice didn't mess around. She confirmed they were immediately terminating the formal investigation into me. The audio was apparently sufficient proof that Austin was acting maliciously. She apologized profusely for the distress, but the side hustle itself, still a massive violation of the employee handbook. She informed me that effective immediately, my employment was terminated, citing violations of policy regarding conducting outside business activities that may compromise company resources or reputation. I wasn't fired for fraud or instability. I was fired for being a sloppy idiot who ran a shadow lending operation from his work-provided laptop. This is the realistic outcome, right? They had to fire me. They can't keep the guy who was doing high-interest loans on the side. But Janice was extremely careful to make sure my termination was filed as policy violation, not for cause related to the malicious accusations. This meant I was eligible for severance, 2 weeks pay, woohoo, and critically temporary Cobra health insurance coverage. What about my insurance, Janice? I asked, my voice tight. I have personally confirmed your United Healthcare access has been restored, she said. The flag on your account was lifted immediately upon review of the recording. We apologize for that error. We are taking the data breach very seriously. So I lost my job, but I kept my insurance. That is a huge, massive victory. NGL, I cried for 20 minutes straight after I hung up with Janice. I cried not because I lost the job, which was fine but boring, but because the anxiety about losing my meds was gone. I have coverage. I can breathe. Update on Austin Ramirez, 23M. Lee and I went to the precinct yesterday afternoon. We filed a report detailing the theft of data, cyber extortion, harassment, and the original breach of contract. The detective was a middle-aged woman named Detective Reyes who looked like she'd seen everything and was unimpressed by 23-year-olds using leverage. She listened to the recording. She took notes. She asked me if I had copies of the texts where he threatened my health. I provided the screenshots. This is open and shut extortion, Mr. Morgan, she said flatly. Especially the HIPAA angle, even if he accessed it indirectly through your personal accounts. We will pursue him. We will be asking him to come in for questioning. I asked if I had to repay the loan. No, you were extorted, she said. The debt is probably civil, but his criminal charges will trump that, especially since he used stolen information to try and collect the debt. You are the victim here. Hearing someone call me a victim felt bizarre. I felt like an idiot lender, not a victim. But I'll take it. We drove back from the precinct and I felt this strange, heavy weight lift off my shoulders. I was going to be okay. I was broken, jobless, but I was insured and safe. Update: the Austin meltdown Friday night, Saturday morning. I woke up Saturday morning at Lee's place, exhausted but wired. My phone was on silent, locked in her desk drawer as per her instruction. You need a digital detox, Gregory. Let him scream into the void. Lee checked the burner phone she used to set up the meeting. Y'all, it was Chernobyl levels of meltdown. Austin had apparently realized I'd recorded him and gone completely ballistic. 11:00 p.m. Friday, Austin. Did you pick up the phone? I was joking. 11:05 p.m. Austin. I did not hack anything. I was lying. 11:15 p.m. Austin. I need my money back. I am calling the police on you for harassment. 11:30 p.m. Austin. If you send that audio, I will tell everyone about lending thing. Too late, kid. 1:00 a.m. Austin, please. I am so sorry. I am panicking. I didn't mean it about the health stuff. 3:00 a.m. Austin, G. I saw her friend leave. Tell her to call me. She's hiding you. He had somehow spotted Lee in the Corolla. He's stupid but observant, I guess. The last text was the most satisfying. It came at 8:00 a.m. Saturday morning. 8:00 a.m. Austin, Gregory. I spoke to Detective Reyes. She said I need to come in. She said this is very serious. What do I do? Lee laughed when she read that one. What do you do, Austin? You hire a lawyer who is better than you deserve. Fast forward to Tuesday night. I'm back at my apartment, but I changed the locks and installed a cheap security camera on the Ring system. I feel a bit like a paranoid prepper, but safe is safe. I've spent the last 48 hours updating my resume and deleting every single piece of data related to that awful P2P lending side hustle. I shut down the website, deleted the Cash App account, and shredded every piece of paper. Done. Never again. Lee came over to help me finish the purge. We were sitting on my floor surrounded by shredded documents and empty pizza boxes. I'm finally eating again, BTW, and it's not gelato. And she started talking about the bigger picture. You know what the real failure was, Gregory? She asked, stacking the tax documents neatly. My password management, I offered sheepishly. That yes, but the real failure was the lack of boundaries. You were desperate for cash, yes, but you let him blur the line instantly. The minute you let him send oops, you told him he had power over you. The minute he brought up his grandma's roof, you allowed the manipulation. You were scared of confrontation, so you let him dictate the terms. She looked at me serious. You have to be willing to lose the money to enforce the boundary, Gregory, because if you're not, the boundary doesn't exist. You lost $3,500, but you gained the understanding that your peace is worth more than that. And you certainly gained the understanding that your health is not something a client gets to weaponize. That hit hard. My estrangement from my parents, the reason for the ASD treatment, has always been my biggest vulnerability, the thing I hide the most. Austin using it against me was the ultimate violation. The shame of that vulnerability being exposed was almost worse than losing the job. But Lee was right. I stood up for myself. I faced the monster. and even though I was shaking, I won. The aftermath and the set boundaries: I am officially jobless, which sucks, but I have enough savings to float for 3 months, and I am actively interviewing for legitimate tech management jobs that don't involve Zelle transfers and sketchy side agreements. I set some immediate necessary boundaries in my life. 1. The lending is dead. I contacted every other client from the P2P thing and offered them a 30-day window to pay off the remaining principal with 0 interest, citing unforeseen legal complications that required me to shut down the operation immediately. Most of them were fine and paid up instantly, glad to be out of the high interest. I recouped about $11,000, which is going straight to my emergency fund. 2. The Austin boundary. I have 0 communication with him. Detective Reyes told me he has been retained by a public defender and is refusing to cooperate, but they have the recording. She said he's facing potential felony charges, which is more than enough for me. My personal boundary is that he is dead to me. I will cooperate with the DA, but I will not look up his social media, I will not talk to mutual friends, and I will not think about his stupid TikTok but for people who hate dancing app. 3. The Lee boundary. I realized how reliant I was on Lee to solve my problems. She is amazing, but I need to be my own protector. I told her, Lee, I need you to be my friend and my mentor, but I need to handle the next steps myself. She was totally supportive. That's the best boundary you've set yet, Gregory. 4. The parent boundary unexpectedly reinforced. The fact that Austin tried to use my specific therapy trauma, the one linked to my parents, against me was actually weirdly freeing. It forced me to acknowledge that the trauma is real, it's not something to be ashamed of, and it's certainly not something an external factor can exploit if I'm honest about managing it. If someone asks me why I was getting therapy, I'm just going to say, I manage my mental health actively. No apologies. That's a massive step for me, TBH. A week later, the reflection. It's now Thursday, a week and a half since the diner confrontation. I'm typing this update from my IKEA desk, still in the dark, but the anxiety isn't vibrating anymore. It's a low hum, manageable. I had a great interview this morning for a job at a logistics firm that seems completely risk-averse, which is exactly what I need right now. The messy middle is still messy. I am having nightmares about Jim and Janice. I still check my corporate email every hour, even though I know I am locked out. I'm spending too much money on coffee, but I am not running, I'm not paying him, I'm not hiding. I did something I would have never done before. Yesterday, I got a text from a mutual friend, Sarah, who called me out for ghosting Austin and making him pay for a burst pipe. Old Gregory would have apologized, tried to explain, and probably offered Sarah $50 just to make her stop texting. New Gregory just replied, Sarah, Austin extorted me using my private health data, which he stole by hacking my personal email. He is currently facing felony charges. I suggest you check the facts before you defend a criminal. I wish you the best, but I am blocking this number now. Take care. And then I blocked her. It felt awesome, like setting off fireworks inside my chest. I realized that setting boundaries isn't about being mean or unforgiving. It's about self-preservation. It's about clearly stating, this is my line, and if you cross it, there are consequences. Austin crossed it, thinking I was just a desperate soft touch who would fold immediately. He didn't realize that desperate soft people sometimes have extremely competent, angry financial mentors who will set them on fire. I still have to manage the whole process with the DA, and the fact that I am now unemployed is stressful. My credit score took a small hit closing down that business account, and I have to buy my own health insurance next month until the Cobra kicks in. Logistics are nightmares, but I am eating real food. I laughed at a stupid TikTok about cats today. I'm sleeping more than 4 hours a night. I survived the Chernobyl. And I learned that the $3,500 I lost to Austin was actually the most expensive tuition fee I've ever paid. I learned to draw the line in the sand, even if my hand is shaking when I do it. Thanks for letting me vent all of this out, guys. Writing it down in real time was the only thing that kept me sane during that horrible 72 hours. I'll keep you posted on the legal end, but for now, the nightmare is over. I'm focusing on the next chapter. And TBH, my next job application includes a line about my extreme proficiency in two-factor authentication. We'll update if anything else insane happens. Stay safe out there, and for the love of God, use unique passwords.